I remembered the day I stood on stage in the ugly green drapes of my high school auditorium more sharply than any other in my life. My hands wouldn't stop sweating as Principal Bake called me up to speak for the graduating class. I'd practiced my speech so many times that it ran through my head like a lullaby. I'd planned to talk about dreams, about making things, building solutions for problems nobody else noticed, chasing after what felt impossible. I was about 20 seconds in before it happened. And someday I'll design robots that transform people's lives, maybe even take them all the way to the moon. That's when the laughter started. It was subtle at first. A cough, a snicker from the back rows, where the football players sat bunched together in their black suits, feet too big for the rented shoes. Sung-ho, my cousin, made a sound that landed somewhere between a hiccup and a bark. Then, as if on cue, more of them joined in. A ripple of amusement turned into a tidal wave. Even some of the parents in the front looked at me, eyes bright with pity. Principal Bake leaned in, giving a diplomatic smile. "Thank you, Ji-won. Let's move on to—" My words caught in my throat. I nodded, forced a grin that tasted like old pennies, and walked off the stage, the applause light and scattered as yarn. Afterward, no one wanted to discuss the ceremony. My mother squeezed my shoulder hard enough to leave fingertip bruises. "You embarrassed yourself," she hissed in the hallway, as guests carried bouquets and chatter through the exit. "Why couldn't you be like everyone else? Why must you inflate your head with these American TV dreams?" I swallowed the urge to argue, feeling my own heart shrinking down, something soft pressed into a box. At dinner that night, the extended family gathered around the low table in our apartment in Mappo, bowls of seaweed soup and smeat pancakes crowding the space. My uncle leaned across, filling my cup with macchioli. "Robots, eh? Next you'll be saying you're president, or God." His laughter was joined by Sung-ho's, a throaty boom that drew everyone else in, even my mother. My grandmother said nothing, but I saw her quick frown, a sharp line across her usually gentle face. "You're good with computers," my father offered carefully. "But there's no future in fantasies, son. Reliable jobs, civil service, medicine. Those are for people with sense." After everyone left, I sat on the balcony, knees tight to my chest, shivering in the late May night. Seoul city lights flickered between the apartment towers, tiny windows into unreachable worlds. I told myself quietly, so that no one else could hear, that I wasn't wrong. But honestly, I didn't believe it. The next 4 years at Seoul Tech crawled by in increments of fatigue and self-doubt. I worked long shifts at the local PC bank, took on private math tutoring to cover what my scholarship didn't. My mother piled up construction company brochures on my desk, underlining salary ranges in red, as if stability itself was a mathematical answer I kept flubbing. One night in my second year, stumbling home from an all-nighter at the campus lab, I heard my father's voice through the thin apartment door. "Ji-won will come around. I doubt he'll make it past graduation." Mother responded with her usual click of tongue. "He's still a boy. What does he know? Once he fails, he'll return to his senses." For days, those words soured every meal and followed me to sleep. The shame was persistent, oily, spreading through my bones. I stopped talking about my projects at home. When I received praise or an award, I kept it to myself, wrapping each accomplishment in silence. It wasn't just inside those walls. Even among friends, the dream seemed absurd. We were sitting at a cheap fried chicken joint, our hands greasy, the city's monochrome rush pressing in through steamed-up windows. Min-jae, my lab partner, asked, "What's your plan, really?" I hesitated. "Start at a robotics firm, maybe abroad. Build biotic limbs." Soyun snorted into her beer. "Sounds like something for a textbook, not real life. Who's gonna hire a guy from Mappo without a fancy uncle or PhD? The others shifted, not disagreeing. I recognized the look, doubt, mixed with affection, half joking but real. I let it wash over me, then changed the subject. There were pockets of happiness, sure, a late night when my prototype gripped its first plastic cup, a professor's nod of rare approval. But mostly, those years were long, tight corridors with no signposts except the steady, low beat of something like spite in my chest. I would make it just to prove them wrong, I told myself, though truthfully, my conviction was brittle. Everything changed with an email 2 weeks after graduation. EK Robotics, a sprawling company working on next-gen prosthetics and AI in the heart of Pangyo Techno Valley, needed a junior engineer with coding skills and excessive enthusiasm. It was the last line that caught me. A passion for creating the impossible preferred. On my first day, entering the glossy glass lobby past men in perfumed suits and women in immaculate white lab coats. I couldn't help feeling like a stray dog in a palace, but the lab smelled like solder and plastics, familiar even as my nerves danced in my stomach. I worked in the shadows, tinkering at night, perfecting algorithms, fixing other people's mistakes. I got used to caffeine jitters and missed meals, the pings of family group chats going unanswered. 3 years passed. I earned promotions while skipping office nights out. People slowly began to listen. My solutions found their way into production lines. My code sped up their neural interfaces. But the idea for something greater, my own, kept pulsing at the back of my mind. A project that would change everything. An exosuit for the disabled, affordable and adaptable. The higher-ups liked safe bets, not a moonshot by a kid from Mapo. My manager told me so after my third proposal. You've got spirit, Jiwon, she said kindly, but spirit isn't ROI. That rejection stung, but beneath it was something clarifying. I stopped asking for permission. I'd been saving quietly, watching every one. I'd learned from all those rejected homecoming dinners that sometimes a person had to build the table themselves. I worked late, then later, then all night. I wrote grants on weekends, begged every old professor for introductions, stalked US and Japanese investors across LinkedIn until one replied, half out of pity, half out of wonder. I maxed out my credit cards. I missed birthdays and funerals. I lost friends and gained gray hairs. There were nights when my hands shook so badly I had to use my teeth to solder wires. Days when my mother's calls went to voicemail, the ache of guilt thick as blood. Still, point by point, the exosuit came together, carbon shell, silent motors, a language of control tuned to each user's nervous system. I named it Gaeul. After the autumns, my grandmother used to walk to the riverside before her fall cut that joy from her life. People still laughed. A few investors hung up within 30 seconds. Family acquaintances snickered at family weddings that Jiwon is still playing with robots. It hurt less, maybe. Or maybe I was numb. A year after starting, I finally had a working prototype. I'd rehearsed the demo in the small office I rented above a dental clinic in Gangnam. Gaeul fit over the legs like a second skin, sensors listening for the faintest muscle flickers. On the morning of the launch, I brought my grandmother into the ring. The smell of antiseptic mingling with solder and the faint aroma of sweet rice cakes I'd bought for luck. She'd lost her ability to walk 2 years earlier. Her eyes, clouded but attentive, met mine as I strapped on the device. My mother grumbled outside, refusing to enter, insisting it would shame us all if I failed in front of the woman who sacrificed so much for you. My grandmother squeezed my hand. Show me, Jiwon. The motors whined to life, softly, a purring mechanical music. I guided her hand to the control pad atop her thigh. I'd trained the system to respond to tiny shifts in intent, not just muscle, but anticipation, the human desire to move rendered in code. We started with a step. Her foot, so long still it barely knew the floor. My grandmother gasped. The trembling of her hand transmitted into an uncertain dance. After a dozen steps, halting but real, tears